Committee meeting. Item number 2 is the approval of the agenda. Please note that the agenda has been amended to add item number 4 and to add a link to the ED contract. There's a motion.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved. Item number 3 is the approval of the meeting minutes.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Approved. Item number 4 is the consent and vote for contracts and expenses. An update.
Yeah, I can walk through these. The first one on there is Intrans. This is for our data bike project we're doing with Iowa State University. This is something that we made regular payments on over the last couple of years, so this is just the next in that. The middle one there is the payment for the executive director search firm. That's something that was in the budget. And then the final one there, this is something that this is one of the items that was added in the amendment. This is something that we've talked about kind of in passing a little bit when we talked about Connectify and switching to that a couple months ago. This is the other piece to that, and it's switching from our current deferred compensation provider to the state's retirement investment club. This is very low cost. It's come as a recommendation from the finance subcommittee as well. I know the cities of West Moines and Johnson use it, probably among others. We did have legal counsel review the agreement that's been put forward. They didn't find any issues with that. We recommend approval, and the key thing about doing this now is we have to give 90 days notice to all employees that are current and former employees that are involved in our current deferred compensation before we can switch. So we'd like to switch at the beginning of the fiscal year. This would allow us to do that. If there's any questions on that, I'm happy to take it. Otherwise, ask for your approval.
Move approval. Second.
Additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Approved. Item number 6 is the report and vote for the executive director contract. Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 5 is the consent and vote for the February financial statement.
Yeah, we reviewed this earlier this week at our finance subcommittee. There goes in now chairs, and everything will be fine with from that committee's perspective. So we ask for your approval.
Move approval. Second.
Additional comment? All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Approved. Item number 6 is report and vote for the executive director contract.
Yeah, so you should have received a draft of the contract. This is largely based on the LOI that we had at the end of the last meeting that approved Dome's hiring. Scott Brennan is online here. Scott drafted the actual contract with help of his employment attorneys at Denton. So Scott, I don't know if you have any further to add on that.
No, there was nothing particularly unusual. It was based upon sort of the form agreement that has been used with the prior executive director. There were a few additional tweaks, but they were fairly small, and it's been reviewed by one of my employment lawyers, and it passed muster with her. And it also incorporates the consultants who had helped with the process. It incorporates a couple of the provisions that they wanted to be sure everyone was mindful of, and so they're in the agreement.
Congratulations, Dylan. I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Additional comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Approved.
Thank you all.
Congratulations.
Good job. Item number 7 is a report and vote for fiscal year 2024 to 2027 transportation improvement program amendments. Seth?
Thank you. We have a handful of TIP amendments to put before you today. The first one is from the Iowa DOT. This is for a project on I-80 between University Avenue up to Douglas Avenue. In reviewing their costs for their upcoming letting, the cost increased, so the Iowa DOT needed to increase their total project cost from 99 million to 111 million. That triggered the need to do an amendment. So that one is here. We also have a handful of other ones. One from the city of Moines. This is for the Southeast Connector. We're very excited to see that this project was awarded 34 million in infra grant funding. This project's been on the books for a long time. It's really exciting to see this happen and get this project completed. So very excited to see this on there. The remaining 4 are from Polk County. Most of them are smaller bridge projects. So this first one is a bridge that is on Northeast 40th Avenue, just south of Mitchellville. This is funding that we gave to this project, SPPG, in the amount of $550,000 in SPPG funding. Another one that we have for Polk County is for their Northeast 23rd Avenue project. Again, we awarded SPPG funding to this project a little over $3.2 million. And this change is to add this project into the 24-27 TIP. Another bridge project from Polk County, we awarded $500,000 SPPG funding for this one. Again, the change is to add this into the current TIP. And then I believe the final one is another bridge project for Polk County. We awarded $350,000 in SPPG funding for this one. And again, we're adding it to the TIP. These Polk County projects were all included in their county 5-year program, but they have not been filtered up into our TIP officially. So we're just cleaning that up along with the other 2 amendments that we have to the TIP. So happy to take any questions you have. Otherwise, these are before you for your approval.
So all these to be completed by 2027, is that right, Zach?
Currently they're in the TIP in various different years between 25 and 27. It's likely that some of these projects might roll. When we do our TIP development here in the next month or so, we'll have a better idea of where these projects are going to land in the next TIP, but they'll be somewhere in that time frame.
Gotcha. Move approval.
Second.
Initial discussion comment? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Approved. Thank you, Zach. Item 8 is report and vote on the Scott Avenue Dam mitigation change order number 1. Zach.
Yes, thank you. So we have our first change order that Snyder has presented to us for the Scott Avenue Dam project. This is a pretty minor change. As the workers were out on site working on the concrete around the bridge, they noticed a few vertical cracks, which you can see in the images on the screen here for you. To address those, they need to do a couple expansion joints to make sure there will be no more cracking in those areas. The total cost of this change order is $1,000, so it's really a pretty minor change. They wanted to take care of it while they were working on it, and it was not in the original contract. So that's why we have this change order before you. Happy to take any questions about it. Otherwise, it's before you for your approval.
Well, Mayor Rose asked you to say, I mean, isn't the dam's getting removed?
Not all of that's being
Oh.
removed. They're taking out pieces of it. They couldn't remove all of the dam, otherwise it would create it'd be too expensive to remove the whole thing, and it would structurally affect the bridge. So
Okay.
they're removing pieces of it to reduce the safety issues, and some pieces are staying in there. And so I assume that this is in a section where they're staying in, and so they want to address the cracks.
So what happens if you get off track and you're in a tube or a canoe or something and you miss the part that the dam is still there? You're not gonna get
So the-
sucked under and
The
die.
water goes over it still, but the modifications they're making to it eliminates the recirculating.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're not getting sucked in.
It's a no, you will not get sucked in. It's the continuous a level across there that
Over the
creates
top.
that, and once you break that, it disrupts that and removes that safety hazard.
Move approval.
Second.
Additional comments or? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, same sign. Approved.
Can we just pray that we only have $1,000?
That'll be great, yeah.
Thumbs up.
Item number 9 is report and vote on the MPO bank account signatories.
Yeah, thank you. The policies and procedures manual that we approved last August says that the executive director, assistant director, and planning manager can sign checks. We currently don't have an assistant director or planning manager, and we probably won't for some time. Given all the staff changes going on in the last year, the board approved last June to make Andrew Collins signatory. However, as we'll talk about a little bit later, Andrew's likely going to leave the MPO at the end of the day. So we need a new set of signatories, so that we have 2 signatures. And recommend that Gunnar be added as the most tenured person on staff. And then we have the ability, and then we can have two checks, 2 signatures on our checks as we go forward. We talked about this with the finance subcommittee the other day. They were in support of this. We also talked about probably needing to amend the policies and procedures manual to remove specific positions that have the ability to do science checks. And it'll just be up to the board to make sure there's always two that have the ability. So that can come back later on.
So you always have to have two people sign the checks?
That's currently what we do. The finance subcommittee did say with some of the other things we put in place over the last year that maybe we talked to the auditor and that can be removed, that we have enough, you know, we have enough redundancy and everything to make sure that there's, to allow only one signature. But it would still be nice to have two people with that ability in case someone's not there. Still have the ability to have some checks signed.
No, that was my only question about whether or not we're gonna invest the auditor.
Yeah, so we will do that.
Move approval.
Second.
Additional comments or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say so. And we're approved. Item number 10 is the report and vote on the draft fiscal year 2025 Unified Planning Work Program and Budget.
Thank you. Last month, we talked about the budget side of things, and we'll walk through that again. But this time, we have more of the actual work program draft to show you. And just to recap, this is our scope of work for the next fiscal year that will start July 1st. So as the next several slides, we'll walk through what the draft document actually gets into. There's 5 tasks that we categorize things underneath. The first task is the planning and studies. So this is our plans, our studies, our reports, kind of the bulk of what we do. I won't read through all those in detail, but you can see there we identify what the MPO's role is. This is back to that decision tree that we came up with several months ago, whether we're in the lead or support or it's more of a supplemental type project. And then it also notes whether these are federally required, if they're member requests, if they're just ongoing projects. I'll call out a couple of items on here. One of them is so we have the passenger rail feasibility study. This is the downtown out to on the Grimes line that we've talked about in the past. That's in the budget. We're showing it doesn't use any MPO money, but we take in revenue from those that want to see this study from the communities and from the private sector. So that's in there. At the very bottom, you'll see an item in italics that's about the Midwest Interstate or the Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Initiative. This came up at the tech committee this morning, and they wanted to see that project in there as well. So we added that. It's not in the draft document. It's included in the agenda, but we'll make sure to have that in before it goes to DOT. That came from the tech committee. There's also towards the bottom there, you'll see a multimodal economic impact report and DART planning support. We have had some ongoing conversations with DART, just given our memorandum of understanding with DART to do transit planning services. The agreement is that the MPO will do more of the long-term stuff, DART will do more of the short-term service planning. So as they're going through some of their system redesign and planning efforts, there's just an item in there, DART planning support. And so the MPO will be supportive of that, at least in this draft document, that's what we're showing. And one element of that is this multimodal economic impact report. This would be a study that looks at just what the economic impact is of not just transit, but bike lanes, trails, anything else that's kind of multimodal, just to see what the benefit is to our community. So that's a new project that was requested, and we put that in there.
The multimodal economic impact report is the new one?
Correct. That's something we hadn't done before, and when we went through this process and solicited ideas from our member communities, that's one that came forward.
And then tell me about the Midwest Intercity Passenger Rail. What is, it's first, I guess I've heard.
That is an initiative it's really been going on for the last several years. I think a month or so ago, the MPO agreed to send a letter in support of this initiative. With the big picture is there's an initiative among Midwest states to study passenger rail service. And this at one point was a kind of hub and spoke system out of Chicago. It's been revised a little bit now, and there's a line that's been proposed that would go through Des Moines from Kansas City to the Twin Cities. All this to say the MPO would just be, if and when anything really happens to it, we'd be prepared to look at station locations and what the impacts would be to their system and everything. There's nothing imminent that's happening, but we just know that it might be out there.
Sometimes when we put those things in there, it means dollars are going to it.
Yeah, no dollars at this time. This was just, and again, this came from the tech.
And what about the multimodal economic impact? What dollars are we allocating?
That, I'll touch on that in more of the budget side, but the estimate for that is about $150,000. And we're showing that we can pull that from MPO reserve funds to pay for that. Again, we can talk about whether that's something we want to do and how we can pay for it here in a couple minutes when we get to the more budget side of things, if that works.
Sure.
So if we move on to task 2, this is more of our data collection, research, and analysis projects. A lot of these are pretty standard things that we do. Some of them are federally required, we have to have our performance measure tracking and so forth. Some of them are ongoing things such as the data bike project. There's 2 items in here that are somewhat new, that are getting requests from our member communities that have an impact on the budget. One of them, the bottom 2 ones are those. So the first one is the data and software. There are a lot of new tools that are out there now that the tech committee has been looking at for a couple of months that provide more data analytics for transportation planning, engineering, and so forth. That we think we could go ahead and subscribe to those. And the nice thing about that is it would benefit, those staff in our work, but it was something we can share with our member communities too. So all of our communities could have licenses and through paid for through the MPO, so they could also take advantage of those tools. Similarly, there's been requests for more trail counters. This is something the MPO has kind of done slowly over the last decade or so. There's a need to upgrade those and to expand that system. So we did put that in the budget to buy, I don't know, Carl, how many trail counters? 25 trail counters. And that costs about $175,000. For both of those, we're suggesting that STP funds could be, STVG funds could be used for that. The MPO has traditionally received STP funds for our operations, and this would still be doing that. We're just shifting more towards these initiatives that go back out to the community rather than just pay for the building and so forth here. The rest of them, when you go into task 3, that's more of our funding and programming. So this is doing the TIP, the funding subcommittee, those kind of things are pretty standard. Item 4 are stakeholder engagements. This is our public involvement, media relations, working with boards and commissions like this. That's pretty straightforward and similar to what we've done in the past, nothing new there. And then task 5 is the program administration. And again, this is nothing new here than what we've done in the past. So as we move into the budget side of things, some updates from what we saw last month. On top of this chart, you see the federal funds that come from the USDOT, and this includes the Safe Streets for All funding. So that's the $1.25 million, or it should say $1 million. That's right. And then you'll see there the SDBG funds at $300,000. That had been $95,000 in the past. And again, we were talking about increasing that to $300,000. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, one of those data products in the next item. And then for other funding, this is where we see some revenue from MPO reserves, as well as projects from just other non-federal sources. So local funds from our assessments and so forth. Interest income is another thing in there too. If we go into the next slide, this shows a little bit of a breakdown on the expenses to the organization. So on the top of that chart on the left, you see salaries, wages, fringe, and then our direct and indirect costs on the bottom there. And I'll show you that on the bottom of that page, some changes from last year. So we reduced staff from 10 to 9. We currently have a couple of vacancies, but when we're fully staffed, we'll be at 9 instead of 10 like we have in the past. So there's a cost savings there. But then we have a pretty big increase in special projects, and that's where trail counters, the data, the multimodal impact study, all of those things fall into that category. And then over there on the right, you just see a little bit more of a breakdown of what those are and the costs associated with them. So now, I'm sorry.
The transportation data, is that, what's the 180 right there?
So 180,000 is what we're budgeting for that transportation data. That
For the software that
For the
all
software.
communities can use.
correct. And that's a budget amount. We know one of those in particular, and we'll talk about that in the next agenda item. But there are a couple other requests out there, and there's opportunity to probably get other services. So one of them, and they're all different in what they cater to. So some of them are for roads and bridges type of things. Some of them are for multimodal transit, some of them for bicycle pedestrian type of activities. So a combination of those are what we're looking at getting. And some of them we know what we want to do, some of them we're still exploring. That would be the budget. And the other note on those is that's 300,000 in STVG funds. That's probably more of a one-time thing. We wouldn't need a big influx of trail counters every year. We wouldn't need a big influx of the data every year. Some of these are one-time data expenses too that would drop off after we complete the studies we need to complete.
So the economic impact study, can we go back to that? So
So,
I mean,
so that's something that we've talked about with DART. I think it's also something that the bicycle pedestrian management will be interested in to understand, again, what the impacts of trails, transit, bicycle pedestrian activities, what that all ties into. It would help support the Reimagine DART campaign that's going on, but that would kind of be the MPO's contribution to that effort, if that makes sense.
Show that we get off the bus,
Would show,
shot, put it off the bus. For how much is used.
and obviously, this is all up for discussion. This is.
Yeah, I understand, like, we haven't even started the Reimagine DART conversation. I'm not sure, I mean, if it's specifically for that or specifically for individual communities that it's asked for it. I mean, typically, that's like an extra service that I think we've done in the past where you would, they would pay the MPO to do some of those studies.
Yeah,
Some of
Well,
those
is this
things. I mean,
part of-
that's what we've done previously, not take it out of the reserve and pay for it.
We have done it that way when it's for one specific community, but when
Right.
it's something that benefits multiple communities, that's where the MPO has traditionally paid for it. So again, we can talk.
$1
Yeah,
That's a lot. That's not $25,000, that's $150,000, that's a lot of money.
Well, it depends if this is part of that reimagine. This is because they are looking for funding to help support the reimagine.
Or is it just from the bike collective and the bike, the street collective and the round table and things like that? I mean, that, you
it's,
did mention that.
yeah, and it's really from both sides.
Well, can we revisit it when DART is actually ready to do the reimagine, type deal? Does it have to be in the budget?
We can always amend it into the budget later if that's something we want to do.
I mean, I just think when they're ready to do it and they wanna come with an ask and we know exactly what they're doing with it. I
This is not actually part of the ask thing. They're looking for additional dollars to do the study. Is it?
So when we sat down with DART and talked about their Reimagine DART campaign or the planning effort, there was a couple of things that they were looking for, and one of them was the economic impact study. And we did talk about doing it just for DART, just like you're saying, that might be problematic, but if we can make it so that it's beneficial for everybody and expand the scope, that's something that might be a little more meaningful. The other thing was the data, and they've already been involved with the conversations with the rest of the tech committee. So part of that data product that we were already looking at doing would help them in that. That's so far all they've asked for from the MPO, aside from just our general assistance with the data that we already collect, the things that we already do could be handed off.
I'd like to see them get a little bit further down the road and see exactly how they're gonna do this reimagined art and then come to us. I'm happy to be supportive of it, but I mean, I think it's a little premature to go into our reserve and get $150,000.
What's the timing on the reimagine or?
Well, that's what they're putting it together now. They're supposed to be doing it probably sooner than later. I mean, they knew, they were looking, I know that the study, the number they were throwing out, they were gonna be asking people to help support to do their study. So if that's that, then they do need it. Because we need to get going on, right? When you're,
If we go that route, will it require a budget amendment?
If we don't put it in now and it comes back later, yes, we would need to do a budget.
Which we've done that in the past. So, I mean,
It's,
More work?
I mean, it's a little more work to do it just from an administrative process, but you hold a meeting and just like we would at any other meeting, and we say we're gonna have the budget, we send it off to the DOT, and that's kind of it.
I'm interested to know how much of that is specifically for this rail line.
For the,
Is this, when you say multimodal economic impact study, is this specifically around that new proposed rail line that would go from Grimes down to?
yeah, that's not what we envisioned it to be for. It would be more so for general public transportation, bicycle, pedestrian, trails and street.
I'm a little suspect on the rail line. I don't know how successful it's gonna be long term. I don't think we need to invest a whole lot of money towards that, but.
This would be,
That's the other 25,000.
That's the other 25,000.
There's another 25,000 in there, on top of the 150. Those are coming out of the reserve.
no, the 25,000 for the rail would not come out of the MPO. The MPO has no financial input into that. Okay. The way this is envisioned anyway. That would come from contributions from the communities along the corridor as well as from the private sector folks. If we jump to the next slide real quick, I want to touch on something that Mayor Alrod brought up last time, which was the reserve funds that we have. Right now we have, or at least what we're forecasting here is about $1.6 million in reserve funds. And the question was, how much is too much to keep? We did talk about that with the finance subcommittee earlier this week. And I will note that in this draft budget, there's a little over $600,000 from our reserve funds going to various projects. Some of them are the multimodal, like we just talked about. A few of them are things that we've already committed to in the past, such as the Purple Heart Highway study, as well as the, I'm blanking on what the other one was. Anyway, it's something, the match for Safe Streets for All. Yeah. So those are things that we've already committed to. There was in the employment agreement for me, there was $20,000 for something. So that all comes out of there. So we've already kind of started reducing that down and assuming that everything goes forward. That would drop us down to about $1 million in reserve after the end of this budget. And we spoke to the finance subcommittee and they said, keep the 3-month reserve, that's good standard practice. We do show that in this budget. But then they wanted to make sure that given some of the structural changes that have been happening, which basically means some of the contracts that we've had, we don't have anymore going forward after this budget. Let's make sure that everything still works. Let's take our time to figure out what we want to do with the rest of that reserve. And we can also explore some budget forecasts because traditionally our expenses will increase faster than revenue comes in. So we might have to do that.
And that was from the tomorrow plan, right? A lot of that reserve?
No.
It's just
What was
built
the
up
reserve? The reserve is just what we built up over time.
Okay.
When this goes back years and years, to 2 directors ago, we were kind of in a hole. And
Right.
so we raised assessments, we've done some things to
Yeah.
build that back up.
No, and what is the questions? What is that level? So
Right.
should be
Right.
going forward.
All that to say, there are some things that we've been requested to do. We have reserves to do them. So it's not a financial discussion necessarily, it is a financial discussion, but it's not that we don't have the money to do it. It's just we want to be strategic and selective in what we spend that money on. So very much welcome comments and ideas from you all of what we should do with those funds and what are the projects that have been proposed to us fit that bill.
Well, my opinion, I think we need to establish whatever that threshold is, and let's manage to that, and then whatever money's left over, let's put it forward. How we're going to work, I think that's ultimately the central question. Going back to the multimodal study, economic impact study, are we gonna see value out of that? Are we gonna learn things that will cause us to reconsider our transportation plan here in the metro? And is this something that we will benefit from an NPO standpoint?
I think our member communities definitely would benefit from it. So for example, if we say for every dollar we spend on regional trails, we get X amount back in motel tax, and we can calculate all the various things that generates from an economic standpoint. That gives us a little more, and just a little more knowledge. It's okay to spend money on these kind of things, or
ask for more money from somebody else.
right, or when we apply for grants, when we or the member communities apply for grants, that's more of an argument to be made of why they should be funded, for example.
Well, yeah, I can see some value from an economic development strategy perspective. From a community, looking at this through the community lens, where do I want to put my dollars and my efforts as a means of trying to maximize the economic development opportunities that I might have in my community. And I can see how many other communities might also see the value in that as well. Is 150 from a group perspective, is that going to generate into value for all communities? I think it would, but it's really just a matter of dollar figure. Are we collectively in line with that?
And that 150,000, that's a yes right now, of what that would cost. Until we do a scope and do RFPs and that kind of thing, we don't exactly know what's a placeholder right now. But I guess the bigger question is, that something that you want the MPO to even participate in? And this is just a draft, we have a couple months.
I would prefer that we amend the budget when reimagine if they come. If they're gonna come and ask, we're all gonna have to make a decision at that point of how we contribute at the MPO.
Or you just get dark one.
I mean,
Yes.
And keep in mind,
I would wait. I think that the economic impact of, bike lanes, bike trails and things like that. I think, individual communities already have their CIP budgets and what they're going to do and how they're going to do the majority of it. I'm not sure if this is quite necessary to invest our reserve dollars in that. I think this is more probably targeted for DART and reimagine DART. And like I said, I'll be in favor. I just want to see a bigger picture of it. And we've amended the budget multiple times in the 10 years that I've been here. It's not, I mean, it's simple. It's an agenda item. You come with a recommendation and we vote on it.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And I do want to make clear too that this is for the MPO's operations, then there's a whole other SDBG side of things, and DART did ask for more money on that side of things.
Yeah,
this
that's
year.
coming. I know that's
That'll be coming at a future month.
I guess I'm not exactly sure, what my position is on this. I think to argue the other side of it, Joe. This is a placeholder for the budget. We're still gonna have a say-so to learn about what this plan will entail. As we learn more, and we'll have the ability to say, now, this is not something we want to do at the time of actual spending the dollars. So, to argue the other side of it, it may be prudent to go ahead and create an earmark in the budget, and then have further conversations later on of whether
To
we
the scope
support
of the
this
budget.
or not.
Scope of it,
Yeah, just because it's going to be in the budget doesn't mean it's.
it's gonna be spent.
Yeah, you still have to approve the contracts.
I mean, I don't see you're making more work on the back end if you're going to have to do an amendment. Because you're going to have to see the ultimate code for the expenditure anyway, right? So.
So these are more or less placeholders on the budget that it doesn't, and once you get the scope, it's gonna be less.
Correct. It's similar to what we've done with the State Street, or with the Purple Heart Highway. We put money in there to do the technical analysis if it's needed. If it's not ever needed, we won't spend the money. If it is needed, we have the budget to do it. We still have to sign all the contracts and everything else. There would be other decision points along the way for you to say yes or no.
I think that's where I'm at on the budget piece, that I'm kind of thinking without a leave it in there. We are still gonna have to have lots more conversations. We need to learn more specifically about, what we're gonna spend that money on. And then, wholly separate, we gotta figure out what our game plan is gonna be of how we spend down the excess. I guess where my head initially is at is that probably should be, if we can, sliding over into the funds to fund additional projects, community projects. There's a whole set of conversation we're gonna have on that end and how we spend that money down. So, today, whatever we decide to do with the budget piece, we're gonna have a lot of looking at this going forward on that multiple different fronts. It's not like we have a financial impact and whatever, it's just a matter of trying to move it from reserve to over here. I think that's where I'm kind of aligned.
And when you talk about moving it over to community projects, do you mean infrastructure projects?
Yes.
Or, because traditionally, this is our operational dollars, separate from the SDG funding dollars.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've ever transferred it over like that, not to say we can't.
We have, we ever. Yeah, if we're sitting on.
We can do it for planning.
$600,000 too much, if we decide at the end of the day, let's put it to work.
I don't think it's ever gone any projects. We've never done that.
We have done for planning projects, so we
Yeah,
could do
we-
something like
We
that.
did plans, but it's never gone to,
Not in the bricks and mortar.
we'll have people fist fighting in there
Right.
for 600,000. That's why it's never done that.
But it's putting it into things
That's
like,
the issue with that.
but putting it into things like trail counters, like we're showing here. And now we put that out of SDG, so maybe we don't pay for it with SDG funds, we pay for it with reserve funds. That's another option to spend down that amount too.
Yeah, yes.
Mayor Clark has raised her hand online.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One, I agree on the budget placeholder. I think I'm fine with that in terms of putting it in the budget now. But for the bigger picture conversation, when we talked about it at the finance committee, it was really around, this is sort of why we wanted to take our time and plan out how to spend down those reserves, is that there are a lot of different ideas about how to go about this, and we didn't want to have a knee-jerk reaction because we have $600,000 or whatever, and too much, that we wanted to be thoughtful about it and have broader conversations and plan over time on what next steps to take. So I think from that perspective, this was part of the conversation and in terms of let's make sure we're being thoughtful about it, particularly as we, kind of reorder some things in the organization. So using it for planning projects, I'm all for, but didn't want to, part of the goal was not necessarily to come with a plan today around that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Get a motion? Second?
Second.
Any other comments or discussions?
So are we leaving it in there as a placeholder?
Yes.
Then I'm a no vote.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Item 3. Item 11 is the report and optional vote on the streetlight data.
Thank you. So I mentioned the data projects that we've been looking at. One of them is called Streetlight Data. That's the name of the company. It has nothing to do with getting data from streetlights. Just want to clarify that. This is something the tech committee has looked at over the last several months. We had presentations at the tech committee's meeting in December from a couple different vendors, Streetlight being one of them. And we surveyed the tech committee representatives after there was a preference for streetlight data. They have a lot of different modules, as I mentioned, these data products are set up for different purposes. The one that we're looking at, there's a module called vehicles, and there's one called freight module. As we work through our long-range transportation plan and the goods movement study, that's one of the projects that we've had, it's in this year's budget, and it will continue on into next fiscal year as well. The goods movement studies is just looking at how freight moves, truck routes, all of those kind of things. This would be a very useful tool for us to have. So if people are comfortable, given the conversation we just had of putting that into the budget starting with the fiscal year, our next question would be, can we move that up and start using that data now? So that we can use it as we do the long range plan and the goods movement study and not wait necessarily until the beginning of the fiscal year. If there's agreement to do that, we can come back next month with a more formal ask or contracts and expenditures item. And they work with Streetlight to develop a service agreement and all of those kind of fun things. But if there's not, we don't want to go through that effort if there's questions about this or anything. I will note that we talked to the technical committee about this morning. They were very enthusiastic to do this and to get this going. But this is obviously a budget decision that has to go through this committee.
That come out of reserve too?
No, that would come out of STG is what we're proposing. And it can come out of either one. That's just where we proposed it.
Is there an overlap between this and the multimodal study?
Some of the data that this could provide could be used for that economic impact study, but otherwise they're kind of two separate things. Okay. This would allow us to tell, to give us data on traffic volumes and traffic counts and origin destination. It takes a lot of the onus. The nice thing about this is, like I said, there's a regional license, so every community can have access to this. And from their standpoint, they don't have to go out and put, if they get complaints from the community members of people speeding along this roadway, they can use this to study that and see if that's actually the case rather than mobilize police departments or whatever out there. So actually study it and take a lot of time to do it.
Is there an option to access?
Yeah, how's it work? It uses cell phone data. So the data that as people are traveling around, kind of GPS information, it aggregates it all up and
So you can
be able to tell the speed.
you can't tell the individual, but it would tell you the average speed on
speed on that street.
Yeah.
And
So you
you
would
have
have
unlimited
speed on
access.
the
I mean, you don't know how many people ask that.
Well, we do a ton of those type of studies in our city. I'm sure all of us do.
Right. And
What's the
currently,
breadth of it? I mean, can you use it for the entire area? You can drill down on a specific corridor?
Wow.
right now, the
How
Iowa
about
DOT has this data, and so I know City of Des Moines and some other communities have used this data, but they can only use it on state facilities because that's all the DOT will give us. We've tried to get the DOT to make it open so that we have it everywhere.
But we have to buy it because they won't open it.
We've worked on that for a couple of years to try to get the DOT to do that, and other MPOs have as well, and it's just, they can't. So that would be an $80,000. With those two modules, that's $80,000 annually. once we do the freight study that we need to do, if there's no appetite to continue on with that, that would drop the cost. We just want to keep the vehicle component. And if we do this for a year and other communities don't really find value of it, and we can always walk away from this. It's just it's a subscription.
How
It's
does
the freight.
Great, yeah.
Yeah,
Tell us.
talk to us about price.
The freight, and Steve, feel free to speak up, if he's looked at this more than I have, but it does kind of the same thing, but you can segregate out trucks versus just other passenger vehicles. So we can look and see where trucks are going, what routes they're taking, what their speeds are.
So if they're going down the wrong routes.
Exactly, and that John Davis from your staff is really interested, because they're looking at what are the truck routes within
Well,
the
I have
city of Moines.
multiple places going through residential areas.
So we better be able to determine where that's at. And then when you start to enforce that, you can better tell.
Because you can then
look
send
backwards and
enforcement people to where those locations are.
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
And then you can also track things over time, so you can see once you instituted some sort of policy, did it have an effect without having to manually go out there and measure. So it's a really powerful tool, and there's a lot of these things out there. This is just the first one we will start with.
That's great.
Okay.
I see
I
that.
like the street like that.
And if there's interest, once we get up and going with it, we can demonstrate what this looks like.
Yeah, I'd love to see a demonstration.
Do we want to go, it says optional vote? I mean, do we want to go ahead and vote?
Any other comments or questions regarding it? I use this type of data, not with this program specifically, for a number of different projects. It's a pretty amazing and valuable tool. You want to know how many people are at an event? Wow.
Yeah, we can tell, so there's an event at Wells Fargo Arena, you could track how far out they come, whether they're coming from whatever counties, how many people can bring.
Serious?
Okay, I'll move to.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Any other discussion, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Number one is approved. Item number 12 is other non-action items of interest to the committee.
Heather has a couple.
Just one quick one, INPIA has been a sponsor of the commercial real estate breakfast that Business Record puts on. They do a very nice job with that event, usually about 500 people in there, a lot of people in this room I see at that event. This year, we're gonna highlight the Safe Seats for All project that we've got going on. But I'm bringing it to your attention today because as part of our sponsorship, we get a table of 10 seats. And we'd like to extend an invitation to our officers and our executive committee members. If you would like a seat at that table, please let us know.
April 25. Oh, I got to read.
The event is on the 25th. We're good. We have a table of 10. So if anyone wants a seat at the table, please reach out to me. It is 7 a.m. and that's when networking starts. The program starts at 7:30.
Staff items?
No. But we get to do all of it here, so we'll save some things for that.
Well, our next meeting is Wednesday, April 10th, 2024, 11:30 a.m. Meeting is adjourned.